Hi everyone, thanks again for joining. My name is Noam, I'm a video producer here at Photomyne. I'm so happy to see that we have so many attendees. Maybe I can also invite people to write where they're from so we know who's with us. You can write it on the chat section on Zoom, or if you're watching us on Facebook Live, so please share with us where you're from. You can write it on the Facebook page, on the Facebook Live stream, and so we can see who's with us. If you have any questions during the session, you can also write it on the chat section. Just when you write it, just make sure that you send it to all attendees and panelists so everyone can see it. We will have Ariel from our support team here answering questions throughout the session. And at the end of the session, we'll also do a short Q&A section where you can ask all the questions that you have, either about Graeme's work or about the app too, about Photomyne app. So yeah, feel free to use that. So again, I think we can start. Let me introduce Graeme Trewin here. Graeme, can you open the mic and the camera?
Hi there, Noam. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for organising this. Look, I just want to start and say a huge thank you to Photomyne, to Mickey and Ariel, and of course to you, Noam, for having me today. But before I kick things off, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're all present on today, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders both past and present. So just to tell you a bit about myself, Noam, and everybody else for that matter, my name is Graeme Trewin, and I contacted Photomyne a few months ago just to let them know how impressed I was with their apps, and it's led to me being here and talking to you today. So again, I'm very grateful to everybody there at Photomyne for having me. And as a means of telling you a bit about myself, I've whipped up a little bit of a timeline. There's a few pictures there to have a look at, but I've put together a bit of a timeline, and a timeline is something that you'll see today is quite central to what I do at People Pages. And so I just thought I'd put one together on my own life so you can have a little look at my journey so far. But in short, when talking about my life, really, I am a father, a husband, I'm a school teacher, I'm a drummer, and I am certainly a dreamer. And that's a big part of what's behind the formation of People Pages and what I'm trying to do with People Pages. Okay, so People Pages. So what is People Pages? In 2018, I started the company that is People Pages, and People Pages is all about the preservation of life stories. It's at the heart of what we're trying to do. We record, we organize, and we write down the stories of people, whether they be memoirs or memorials. Knowing and having access to the stories of those people that we love or have loved is a very precious thing, and it can help us to heal, it can offer us inspiration, and it can also foster courage. Some of the ideas that have now been brought to fruition with People Pages had been sitting with me for a long time, and a couple of years ago something shifted within me, and I started to get things happening. I threw myself into the work head first. I took a term off school teaching. I worked with software and web developers, a graphic designer, and some book publishers. And 2 years later, it's been quite a journey. I've been privileged to work with quite a lot of people to hear, to preserve their stories. Some of these stories are on public display on the website, and others have been set up with private logins for the storytellers and their families. And many books have also been published and sent off to different families. I believe the reason most people don't write their own memoirs is that, or have someone else write them for them, is that there's this perception out there that perhaps such a process should be reserved for the famous, or at the very least, people who've had what you might call a newsworthy type of life. But to me, the reality is that there's inspiration that can be found in every life. And what's important to remember is that every person's story will always be of interest and will always be of value to that person's family, and not just now, but for generations to follow. So for the storyteller, the process of having a memoir written can be a deeply meaningful and satisfying experience as well. It's an experience that can offer perspective and validation for a life well lived. So yeah, so with People Pages, I wanted to give as many people as possible the opportunity to share their life story or the life story of another. And beyond that, I just wanted to create a virtual place that people could access to revisit those stories and the photographs, which we'll talk a lot more about. And that's where the idea and the genesis came from, really. Stories that are all stored at peoplepages.com.au will be there forever. And but how I actually achieve that longevity will probably be a whole other webinar. It's a bit of a work in progress. Today, I want to give all of those people, and I'm very grateful for those who have tuned in, some simple guidelines that they can follow to help them to record a life story, whether it be their own or for somebody else. If we approach this sort of thing with the mindset that a life story needs to be 300 pages long, I think for most of us, that would just mean that it's not actually going to be written. So we'll look at lots of different things, including the fact that you know, it can be relatively brief. It doesn't need to be a huge book. Okay, I want to talk to you briefly about how I stumbled upon Photomyne. At the end of the first interview that I ever did for People Pages, at the end of it, I was given a car boot full of photographs, just a huge amount of photographs. And as I drove off, panic set in, and I thought, how on earth am I going to scan all of these pictures? What am I going to do? This is going to cost a fortune. I'm going to have to buy some big industrial scanner or take it to a company that are going to charge the earth for it. And it was the next day, actually, when I was back at school, and I asked in the staff room if anybody knew of any good photo scanning apps. And I was very lucky because the very first name mentioned was Photomyne, and that was the very first thing that I downloaded. And I've since realized there's quite a few alternatives out there, but nothing does what Photomyne can do. And so as soon as I scanned that first photograph, I was off. It's very quick, very easy to use, and there's all sorts of options you can do, if anything, even to enhance photographs. So that's how I came to discover Photomyne, and it really got me through that first job, and I've been using it ever since. Okay, so the agenda for today is really to just look at that idea that you just need to dive in. If you're going to record somebody's life story, it's really all about just going for it. You know, just turn up, and that's what I've learned works. But I will, of course, show you some techniques and some things that you can put into place to make it run smoothly. We'll look at timelines. We'll talk about the interview itself. I'll talk to you about what to do once you've recorded your interview, how you can transcribe it. I'll talk to you about scanning photographs using Photomyne. We'll then look at reviewing your first draft. I'll talk to you about the things that you need, the resources that you'll need in order to do the job. And we'll look at some things to try to avoid and things that I think have worked for me throughout these interviews. And then finally, we'll talk about options that are there, things that you can do in terms of sharing a finished life story, publishing it in various ways. All right. Okay, so diving in. All right, so yes, I mean, it sounds kind of egotistical to say I specialize in writing life stories. That's what I wrote down here, but I guess I have learned a lot, definitely, in you know, about effective ways of doing this. So my approach is not revolutionary, you'll see that, but it did come from diving in, from turning up at the house of a family friend with an iPhone. That's how I started. I didn't have any questions prepared. I didn't really know what I was doing. I just pressed record on my mobile phone, and I remember just saying, "Douglas, can you tell me about your life?" But what unfolded was really remarkable and incredible. It was quite an amazing day, and I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. So creating a timeline. So if you've organized if you're going to write your own memoir, or if you've organized to do one for someone else, or a memorial for someone that you've lost, a great way to start is to just get out a piece of paper, draw a line, and create a timeline. starting with basic major life events, when they were born, you know, starting with where did they go to school? Are there any major world events that kind of collided with their world? Like in the case of this incredible lady, Peklin Chu Wong's, her life story that the Japanese invaded her homeland when she was only 10 years of age, and then kind of go through all of the different the major events in a person's life and put those down. Okay. You might be able to do this all over the phone before going in for that first interview, or it might be something you just have you might have a preliminary interview with them beforehand. Okay, so it doesn't need to look neat. It doesn't have to be done with any software. Just draw some lines, significant dates. Ask the person to think about milestones, places they've lived in, relationships that they've had, whether the formation of relationships or the dissolution of them. Changes to work life, passions that have developed, and hobbies, all sorts of things. Ask the person then, if it's done over the phone, to just take a photograph of the timeline and send it through to you. That of course just be texted or emailed or even posted if need be. Okay, and here's some more of Peklin's story as well. Okay, the other thing to do at that first sort of meeting or phone conversation is to ask for photographs in advance so that they can prepare them. If you can give that person a limit for the number of photographs that you'd like to take with you, that can be beneficial. And I'm speaking from personal experience. I found that just a relatively small box of photographs could have up to 400 or 500 photographs inside it. So you want to keep a balance. And I think overall, it's better to have a good amount of photographs, but just if they can kind of whittle it down to probably the most precious and most important photograph that will go with their life story and journey. Okay, now this is a relatively new thing that I've started doing, and that is when I go in for an interview, I take in topic cards. So it basically came from, I think the idea just popped into my head one day. I remember that Monty Python sketch is from The Meaning of Life, going way back to the 1980s. And John Cleese plays a character who's a waiter, and he hands out these conversation cards at a restaurant, and that's what they're ordering. They're ordering conversations. But I just thought, what I found was when I would sit down with people and just ask them questions, it's very easy to be overwhelmed and for the mind to wander. And so this to me serves a really, really functional purpose, and it helps to anchor the interviewee, helps to anchor them in that part of their life or anchor them in that event. So it's something that they can kind of explore the terrain and everything around that particular time or event. And then when they've kind of finished that, then you hand the next card. So it's sort of, they're sequentially organized and they line up with your timeline. So I found topic cards to be really helpful, and it kind of makes it a bit fun. I've even seen for some people holding the cards is it kind of minimizes their anxiety a little bit, I think, and helps just to keep them on track. So that's topic cards. All right. So moving on to recording the interview. Okay, so this is a tough one, and I've learned so much as I've gone, and I'm still learning all the time. But ultimately, just let the person talk, listen very carefully. You might have questions that come up in your mind as they're speaking, but try to hold on to them until they have finished talking about a specific topic or an event. You don't want to interrupt their train of thought. But having said that, you might need to give some sort of gentle encouragement to keep momentum, or maybe to bring them back on track. Okay, so move on to the next bit here. Okay, so I've just written this down here. Start with the facts and the nuance will come. If you are just laying down those facts, when someone was born, when they started different things, when major events occurred, all of the details around that will and should come. And if they don't, with just gentle kind of questioning, you can help bring that out. But just know that once you start getting those things down, it's incredible how it feels out and it becomes nuanced, and kind of the depth comes. Okay, this is probably the primary school teacher in me coming out, but I found it really helpful to have the just to keep in my mind the the W's, the 4 W's, even though there's 5 there, but just those key W's of what happened, who was there, where specifically did this take place, et cetera, et cetera. We might be able to, if we have a look at an example here, going back to Pecklin, I've got permission to sort of share the details of her life. That's why she'll feature heavily in this slideshow. But if you have a look at hers here, just even looking at when she was born, there's lots of things you could ask. For example, with who are her parents, and finding information out about those parents. Who else was around your life? Who was in those early years? What other close family or close friends were present? What do you know about the birth? See, there's lots of stories that can come out that perhaps without that questioning, they wouldn't have arisen. What did the parents do before that person was born, for work or hobbies or travels? If you look at, you can explore that whole kind of terrain of the when, are there, any facts known about the climate politically or physically, or what was going on. She's from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So there was a lot of interesting things to be gained about what life was like living in Kuala Lumpur at that time in the 1930s. And then there's where's and why's, and lots that can come out and that can flesh out your story. But it's helpful just to have those there in front of you as well as little prompters. Okay. Okay, and that you can use some little question stems to help to extrapolate or to gain more information. Things like, can you tell me more about something? Why did you think this? Just so I understand this correctly. Things like that can help, of course, with clarification. What was life like for you after this event occurred? Just things like that, specifics that will open up maybe unique perspectives. Yeah, okay. All right. So once you've gone in and you've done the interview, now I missed a very important thing here that I need to mention is, of course, what you will be doing when you go in is you're going to be recording the interview. Now, the very first few that I did, I was recording just using my mobile phone, just an iPhone, and I was using the inbuilt voice recorder app. Then I discovered another app, and I'll talk to you more about apps and things you can use, but there's another app that I used that was very effective. And so I started using that, and then I would upload that audio when I got home, and then I'd just start typing away. What I learned about that was that I'm not a very good typist, and typing up what could be 2, 3, even 4 hours of interviews could take a very, very long time. So early on, I would spend up to a couple of weeks just typing up those interviews. And I did some research and found that there were a lot of transcription services out there. I tried a couple, but one that really impressed me was one called Rev. You can see the little, a bit of the advertisement of the logo up here. Now, Rev is a company that is they offer a transcriptioning service. They do a lot of work for journalists. Basically, you go to the website, upload the audio, and they will give you how much it costs. They'll tell you the price. And I think at the moment, it's about $1.25 US per minute. So it can cost a couple of $100 to do it, but you'll receive your typed text back in about 8 hours. And I've just shown you here, I've taken a screenshot of one, again, from an interview that I did. And if you have a look here, you can see that you've got the text. They will establish who the speakers are, and they will put that in there. So it sort of looks like a little script. And then you've got this interface here where you can press play and hear the interview, and the text will be highlighted as you go, kind of karaoke style. But that in itself is a wonderful thing to have and keep. You can turn that into a PDF, or you can just cut and paste and then do what you want to do with it after that. But that was a real game changer for me, having Rev. It just saved me so much time. Okay, here we go. So once you've got that text, then it's time for you to cut and paste and move around your text. You want to read through, take out parts that are unnecessary or that you don't want to keep. But you want to start to organize your information. I've got a little picture up here of some pigeonholes, and that's very much how I see this process. You should have already kind of organized things with your timeline and also with your little cards, but you will have time. There will be times when people are wandering and with what they're telling you. So you're kind of organizing that information into chapters that go in line with those cards. And then what I do is I create documents for each and every chapter. So in this case, this was the chapter about Pecklin's husband, Francis. So I'd create a document, put all of the Francis information in there, edit it, and then move on. And I would do that for all my chapters until I'd finished, going through the interview and the transcription. Okay. And then once you've done that, if you have a look here, this is the front page of Pecklin's people page, and this is her memoir. And I've just put a little star here to show you. So that's where Francis would go there. You would click on Francis, and then you would be able to read his story. But if you created something like this for yourself, you would still have all of these different chapters. So it's just organizing that. All right, moving on to the next page. Okay. All right, working with Photomyne, scanning the photographs. Okay, scanning old photos is very powerful. I feel like when I'm doing it, it's like you're resurrecting memories. Instantly you have the potential, or you've potentially made something last that was quite possibly on the verge of vanishing. This is one of my favorite photos that I've ever scanned with Photomyne. And it's a lady who's no longer with us. Her name is Molly Malloy, and it was a lady that I interviewed's mother. And this picture actually I found right near the end of the whole project, and it was on a giant, like a board, a wooden board, somehow printed onto the board, but it was faded and just sitting behind a door. And I scanned it, and I couldn't believe how well it came up. I put a filter over it, but it just instantly, it just gave it new life. This one existing photograph, and it's just beautiful, as you can see. So it kind of immortalizes, preserves that. So yeah, for scanning photographs. At the end of your interview, what you'll need to do, of course, is other than taking photos away, before you leave, you want to just check and see that there's no photographs in the house, that precious photos that are in frames that can't be taken out of the frames, or maybe they're too big to be taken out of the house. And so you might want to do some scanning there on the spot. And again, just showing the beauty of Photomyne, you can do that, just pulling out your phone and off you go. All right. Okay, and with your photographs as well, as you're scanning them, it's good to try to scan, just a little tip, to try to scan them in the order that perhaps they occurred. That's very hard to predict as you're looking at them, but of course, black and white to color, and you might recognize the subject, the person you've interviewed as a child and whatnot. But if you scan them in the right order, that can make things easier as well. Okay. Then you come to the review process, the time to review all of the information that you've typed up, the life story. You might do this over a phone call. You might have a Zoom meeting, just like we're doing now, use Zoom, or you might just go and meet with them in person. You share the drafted text with them in chapterized form. They might want to be left with it just to have time to pore over it on their own, and then make amendments. But while you're there, I've got to suggest that you go through the photographs at this meeting, go through the photographs with them that have been scanned, even if it's just on your device, on your phone or on your computer, and caption them there. So that way you can give the photographs back and that side of it's done, because captioning can take quite a while. Now, having said that, in preparing this slideshow, I discovered a really a fantastic feature that I didn't know existed with Photomyne. So this was often how I'd be captioning in the lead up. I'd be writing them on small post-it notes, sticking them on the photographs, and then going home and typing them up. But yesterday, I discovered that in Photomyne, once you've scanned a photograph and you look at each individual photograph, there's a little option here to annotate it. You can type it in on the spot. You can even record it. You just press record, speak into it. And so you could even have the other person speaking into your phone and saying, who it is and when it happened. And then when you get home, you can enter it in. But you can do it then and there on the spot rather than having to do this. But if you prefer this sort of method as well, that might be for you. All right. Okay. Another thing that I think is a very beneficial and a lovely thing to put into a memoir or a memorial is to get some tributes from people who may be family or friends, or people that have known the person. And so when you're on that final meeting, probably when you're handing the photographs back, I'd suggest that you ask the person for some email contacts or phone number contacts, and call, email, text the person or people, and ask if they'd be willing to share a tribute for that person. And I've just found that it can be, especially of course for a memorial, something that can be very precious for those close to that person who's no longer with us. But it's a lovely thing to have. Here's just a half of a page from Peklin Chi Wong's tribute page from her people page, and just different things that I've gathered. We've got one here from an academic friend of hers, and then down here is just a tribute from her grandson. And I've actually put the original in as a photograph. I scanned that with Photomyne as well. But having tributes in it can be a lovely thing to add to a book or a website. Okay. All right, moving on to gear and services. So this is a mix of everything that I use. Photomyne's very much at the heart of what I'm doing with all of the photographs. I scan them, I put them on web pages, and they can be blown up and viewed, and they're transcribed and captioned, and also in the photo books that I make as well. And it's all done via the help of Photomyne's amazing app. And then if we have a look here, I've got a little sponsorship with a company called Rode Microphones, an Australian company. They make not only incredible microphones, but they've got this this device called a Rode Podcaster, a Rodecaster Pro. It's just a little social media pic that shows me doing some recording using this, but it is amazing. You can record straight into it. You just put a memory card in the back, you press record on this little button here, turns red, and it can run for hours and hours. And then you just plug it into your computer when you get home, upload the sound, and it's great. But you've got all of these manual sliders, faders to be able to change levels and get it all working. And these are podcasting microphones by Rode, which are great as well. This, however, was the first particular app that I used after I moved on from just the inbuilt voice recording app in iOS app. Voice Recorder Pro is fantastic. They offer a free version. You can adjust the VU meter levels and get it sounding nice. And you've got different formats that you can record it in or transfer it to. And there's lots of great functionality with that as well. Voice Recorder Pro, and I know that's on offer for iOS and Android. And then just as I mentioned earlier, there's also Rev, which is a transcriptioning service. There's others that are out there, but these guys are really fantastic. And so you just go to their website, rev.com. All right, photo scanning, of course, you've got the Photomyne family of apps. And of course, we've just got their original scanning app, which is Photo Scan, and then you've got the colorizing app, which is pretty incredible. And if you've never used it, it's really quite amazing to see black and white photos that have been colorized in an instant almost. Then you've got Slide Scan to scan old slides, and there's also Film Box for photo negatives. And now both of these, all of these apps are available for both iOS and Android phones and devices. And lastly, I'll just move on to what I've discovered to be do's and don'ts. I don't want to preach on, and sort of give out the impression I'm the foremost expert, but these are things that have certainly worked for me. Okay, things that I've learned that I need to try to do is to just be the best listener that I can be. I need to try to provide always just a nice atmosphere. If I'm having the interview at my house, or if it's in a neutral place, I try to just make it, quiet and welcoming, and make sure, even things like just making sure there's a nice amount of light coming into the room. Being hospitable, of course, whether it's a cup of tea or a glass of water, things like that really count. But ultimately, you're providing this atmosphere so that people can open up and share some very, very personal things with you. And so you need to be somebody that is, I guess, going to help them to feel that way. So you need to be empathic. and you just sometimes the people might get a little bit upset. You might need to take breaks. It just takes, I guess you just need to be considerate and calm and patient. You need to be organized, need to make sure you've got everything kind of ready to go. And you need to be able to set up quickly, but not too quickly. Again, you just want to make things kind of feel calm, but be organized, have your little kit ready to go. And okay, now the don'ts. Let's have a look at just some things to avoid. Try to avoid interrupting. Sometimes if you're a bit anxious when you go in, you might feel like you need to fill every little space, or you might need to do the whole, that happened to me too, or all of that sort of stuff. You want to really just let them talk. Don't worry if you're a little bit confused by some of the specifics of a story. You just wait until they kind of ride that section out a little bit, maybe make a note on a piece of paper next to you and come back to it later on. And it'll seem less silly then actually. It'll make you look like a better listener perhaps than you are if you ask later. Usually when you ask at the time, it highlights sort of, that you weren't listening properly. If you are feeling a little bit stressed, try not to show that in your body language if you can, because that's going to only make them feel uncomfortable. And even if it's for their benefit, try not to be a clock watcher. You don't want them to be feeling like you're in a rush, even if you're just worried about taking up lots of their time. If it looks like it is taking up too much time, just perhaps have a bit of a chat about maybe having another session, or and that's something also to consider. You might say in the lead up to that first meeting that it might take a couple of sittings to get through everything. Okay. Now, this is a really important part. Once you've got the information all recorded and organized, what do you do with it? And look, ultimately, you don't have to do anything with it. I think just having it is really special and precious. It could be just email to family and friends. But if you want to do something with it to really make it last, to make it look beautiful, perhaps, there's always the option of putting it onto some sort of a website. You can build your own website. There's lots of do-it-yourself website building platforms out there. And then you could even look at creating a book. So all of these things are pretty tough to do. It's not easy to do it. And that's a big part of what I've spent the last couple of years doing. That's, working with graphic artists and software developers and web developers and lots of people kind of who specialize in the fields that you need to make a nice looking website. And so that's kind of where I could possibly help if you decide you want to write a memoir or memorial, or if you wanted to ask for my help, I'm here as well. But if you have a look at the website, peoplepages.com.au, you can have a look and see some examples on there. So this is just a bit of an example of what People Pages looks like. You'll see here, so you basically, for memoirs and memorials, there's these sections up here. And you would just click, and not all of the websites again are on public display. There's quite a lot of them. You can select a secure option with a login, and so, but some people are happy for the world to see them. And the lady that I've mentioned a lot today, Peklin Chi Wong, that's an example of her landing page. And then you'll see the chapters there as well. We also offer an audio narration service where you can hear her read her story out for a memoir. And then all my Photomyne scanned photos. There's lots, a couple of hundred photos in this one. But as you click on each image, it appears large. But again, these are things that you could look at doing through some of those do-it-yourself websites. But it's something that we've sort of gotten to the point of being able to do. And almost finished now, but something we've started doing over the last 6 months is creating books. And that's taken quite a lot of work to get that happening, but we're now able to make books using that information that's been organized pretty much in the ways that I've just explained today. So thank you so much for your time. This is the first webinar I've ever done. I felt pretty nervous, I'll be honest with you, but I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I'm very grateful to Photomine, and however it is that you go about doing it, I urge people to ask those questions of others, to record life stories, because I think keeping stories alive is a really important thing that we need to do, and it's important for us, and it's important for future generations. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Graeme. Thank you very much. This was super interesting, very informative, as someone commented here on the Facebook post. Yeah, thanks a lot. I encourage people.
Thank you, Noam.
Yeah, we had a few people ask questions during the session, and Ariel was answering them. So now is the time. If anyone here has any questions to Graeme or any questions about Photomyne, Ariel is with us too, so she can answer those. So if anyone wants to ask a question, that's the time. And maybe before someone asks a question, I'll ask you. I mean, this was super interesting, and it makes you want to do what you do, but it's also a little bit complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, but if someone wants to do something similar to what you do, tell stories and go and collect these stories, what is the first thing someone needs to do in order to step in this kind of business?
Look, the first thing is just to organize, just to oh, goodness me, what's happened here? Sorry, how do I bring that back? 1 second, sorry about that. There we go, sorry about that. The first thing to do is really to, it's just firstly, just ask if you can record somebody's story, and just take a device, whatever device you've got, and just sit down and do it. But if it's something they want to do properly and they're very comfortable doing so, I would say start with that timeline and give them the timeline. You might even do that with them, just to map out those key events, those main events in their life. But yeah, it's a difficult thing, because I feel like, you know, I'm really over the top. Sometimes I feel like, we've got to record your story. Wow, you know, all the time. And often people have to be ready to do it. And same with memoirs, to be said for people who've lost others. They've got to be ready to do it. And so what I've really learned to listen to that. But I just feel like, and I started, part of how I learned to do this was I you know, put together the life stories for all of my grandparents, all 4 grandparents, and they've all, you know, they've passed away quite a long time ago. But it really can enrich your life to learn a lot more about where you came from, and yeah, it's a powerful thing.
That's great, thank you. We have a few more questions. Jackie is asking where you're located right now in Australia, so that's a quick one.
I'm in Ashfield.
Okay.
Ashfield in Sydney. Yeah.
Perfect. And Liz is asking if you have graphic design or layout service that you use for the memoir books.
Oh, yes. I've been using a company by the name of AlbumWorks. They're based in Victoria in Australia, and I've been working with them to kind of get it looking how it's looking. But yeah, a lot of these companies will they've got some pretty advanced software that's really quite easy. It's quite malleable and easy to work around, so you can get the look that you want. And then I sort of import a lot of you know, I use all of the fonts from the website and the logos and the color schemes and all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, a lot of these photo books now are pretty user friendly, so it's easy enough to make those books.
That's great. We have more questions on our Facebook page. So Joanne Keller is asking, what's the best way to eliminate glare while using Photomyne to scan photos?
Wow. Okay, you might be able to help me with that. That's a tough one, but I've really enjoyed the challenges around that. I know that there's some boxes out there that you can get. I've seen on the Photomyne the experts page. I really love looking at that. That's a great Facebook page to be a part of. But yeah,
I can help you with that, actually. I mean, the first thing we'll do, the first tip I would give users is to use natural light instead of fluorescent light or just lights you have at home. So try scanning during the day. That's the first thing I would say. So you don't have to use the lights on your kitchen or on your living room, because those might give you some glare. So if you only use natural light and you don't scan using a big kitchen light, for example, that will eliminate the glare for sure. The second thing you can do is to use some of the products that Graeme was talking about. We have them on our Photomyne website. There's a dedicated section for that. And some of them can be photo tents. So that's a tent made out of light mesh, and that you can scan in the tent when you position the photos in the tent, and that way you can eliminate glare and use top light. And in general, if you have photos inside albums covered with nylon, so take them out of the album and obviously scan without a nylon on top of them. That will be easier for them. We have more questions.
Oh, I'll just say a little
Yeah.
thing. Sorry, Mickey. I'll just quickly say also for that to answer that question. An umbrella can sometimes be a very handy thing to disperse that light that might be sort of, if you want to just create a nice even amount of light across the top of the photograph.
Great. Let's see if David is talking to us about the transcription services with using AI technology. So that's what you mentioned with Rev. So David is saying that he's using Trint.
I've used Trint before. It's a good app. Yeah.
Do you know anything about it?
Trint's excellent. It works in a really similar fashion. I think that's using AI, yeah. But I know Rev uses real people from all over the world. And for example, if you're interviewing somebody who has an accent, a specific accent, you can even specify that, and they will assign that transcription job to someone with that sort of a background, so because they kind of often have it, they can, I don't know, they've got a better ear, more attuned ear for that accent. Trint was really effective, and I was using it for a while, but yeah, I think I just prefer Rev, but Trint was great, and it can all be done on your phone as well. It's quite intuitive. Yeah.
Perfect. So maybe if we don't have any more questions, you're welcome to ask, to send us more questions, and we have Graeme's email here. Maybe something we didn't mention. So how did you even get into this business? What made you really dive into it? Because you're a full-time school teacher too. So
yeah.
Why do you need this headache?
Well, look, I think it's a good question. Look, it actually came from, just things that we all go through, just the loss of loved ones. And I think just that sense of once somebody's gone, it's just that sad reality that there's probably lots of stories that are gone and that maybe no one will ever be able to pass on. And sometimes when those stories are passed on, much like that game where the children are kind of whispering into one another's ears, the story gets kind of watered down, gets altered over time. And I think I don't know if it's just part of getting older, but I've just become more and more passionate about the power of stories, and what that can do for us. And that I had a testimonial actually that came through in the last couple of days from the son of a lady whose story I did. And he was talking about how people's stories can give context to the time that they were living in, but it also can inform, it can inform for future direction as well, and future generations. But I just really feel as though everybody's story is important. And even if it's, you weren't a movie star and you didn't, you're not going to be immortalized in other ways. I think everybody's story counts. And I think this is also a way for people to share, with this testimony, the tribute that I was talking about. People can share what somebody meant to them. And I think that's really important as well. So, it just really came out of that idea that we spend so much time on social media, and the things that, we're going to know about each other in years to come. You'll know what your best mate had for lunch, in 2019, in February one day, but we might not know really important things like, what our grandfather did as his first job, or, what his childhood was like, and that kind of thing. So I just feel like it's also potentially something like this can build, and this culture can build of recording stories and sharing stories. Maybe it'll take us away from some of the more superficial pursuits of, you know, that we are involved in on our computers and on our phones. And this provides a place for people to visit, you know, as well, to go, to read the story, to look at those scanned photographs, and kind of, you know, remind us where we came from, and just taking time out to think about people, you know. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a bit all over the place, but it's kind of where it came from. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, we all share the same passion to telling stories and to keeping memories alive. So this is what we do here, and
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure our viewers will share the same passion with you too. So thank you, Graeme. Thanks everyone for
Thanks
being.
so much.
We will play this video on Facebook. We're also going to send emails to anyone who attended, so they will have the full recording. You can go over it. You can look at the different parts of it. And yes, thanks again. And
beautiful. Thanks everybody at Photomyne, and thanks for taking the time to for everybody who tuned in. And yeah, thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Great. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.